Hello, my name is Andrew Peterson, and this is a screencast presentation that I made for my Instructional Technology class, and I made it on the redundancy principle. To start, the redundancy principle essentially says that when you have a presentation and you're trying to deliver information to your audience, you should either deliver your information vocally or you should put it in text on your slide, but you shouldn't do both, because if you do both, then your audience is trying to read the text on your slide and listen to what you're saying at the same time, and rather than focusing on the information you want them to focus on, they're too busy trying to reconcile these two sources of information, so they aren't paying attention as much as they could be. So if you have information that you want to get across, you should either state it aloud or write it on your slide. Saying it aloud is generally better, and this goes along partly with the modality principle as well, because it's easier to elaborate on things vocally and it's easier for people to pick up on it rather than having it written down, and it's just generally better presentation having a couple of notes that you expand upon vocally. For example, this picture has this caption, look at the Maui beach, isn't it beautiful? This caption is pretty much entirely unnecessary, because if you have this picture, then of course you want them to look at the picture, and of course they're going to see how beautiful it is. So having this caption under it is pretty much time wasting and distracting, because they're just going to waste time reading the caption and not focusing on what you want them to focus on. Now moving on to another example of a bad slide. The main focus of this slide is this picture, but your audience isn't going to be focused on it because they're going to be busy trying to read what the meaning behind the picture is. So they aren't going to be focusing on what you're trying to say. There's definitely some redundancy that would be going on there. This is an example of a much better slide because you've reduced your on-screen text significantly to just your basic note. Your audience can spend most of the time looking at the picture and listening to you elaborate on the significance of the slide rather than reading it all on screen. There is an exception, I would say, to the redundancy principle, a time when you might want to violate it, when you are focusing on pronunciation. For example, if I have something written in Spanish and I'm trying to teach Spanish to native English speakers, I would have the text on screen and I would read it verbatim so that they can follow along and hear me pronouncing it and hearing how these words are supposed to be said and work on their own accent and their own pronunciation. Still kind of goes along with the spirit of the redundancy principle, because what you're trying to focus on is the pronunciation, so this doesn't take away from the main object of focus. But other than that, the redundancy principle is a pretty good idea to follow, and unless you are teaching something as a second language, there aren't a whole lot of opportunities when you want to violate it.